Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video, and I've had another really great reading week, so I'm really happy with that. I managed to complete a total of 7 books and I had an additional DNF. So let's just jump straight in and talk about all of the books that I read this week. So the very first book that I completed was Last Girls by Demetra Brodsky. This is a digital ARC that I received from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. The publish date was in early May, so this book is available now if you're interested in checking it out. So this is a YA. I struggle to classify the genre of this. It's about 3 sisters who are living with their mother, their single mother, and they are what they refer to in the story as preppers, which are like survivalists, like doomsday preppers. And they have recently, I think within like a few months, at the start of the novel, moved to this new like compound full of people who are all also doomsday preppers. And so it's about that. But it has a speculative twist to the story that I didn't expect. I didn't mind. I quite enjoy like a speculative twist to my stories, like a light sprinkling almost of like magical realism. I really enjoy generally. In this story, it was all kind of just a bit strange. There were parts of the book that just weren't well explained at all. And then the book actually has 2 different perspectives. So you're following the oldest sister, Honey. You're following Honey, but then you also every now and again get the occasional chapter from like a different point of view. I think it's from someone, is the character's name Toby? I think it might be Toby, who is in a completely different like location, different setting, everything. And you know, I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be as obvious as what it was, how the 2 storylines were going to tie together. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be like a surprise, like when it eventually did, or if you were just supposed to have figured it out like pretty much straight away, because it seemed very obvious to me. Like I said, there were just parts of it that weren't well explained. Like there were some interesting kind of concepts in there kind of, but I don't know, it was all just a little bit too strange for me really. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't overly enjoy it. In the end, I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I completed was Rosemarys Baby by Ira Levin. So you guys have heard me mention this, that Rosemarys Baby, I have seen the movie, which I can't remember what year the movie came out, but this was published in like the late 60s, and I believe the movie came out pretty soon after this was published. What year was this? Yeah, so this is 1967. So this is about a woman named Rosemary who is, at the start of the story, her and her husband managed to get an apartment in this like really like prestigious kind of like apartment building in New York City. But they have a like male friend of theirs, like a man who says to them, oh, I don't know about if I'd want to go live there. Like there's a lot of like weird goings on in the background of this, in the history of this building. Like a lot of suicides, a lot of unexplained deaths, and like serial killers in the past who have lived there. It's like weird stuff like that. And so they end up moving to this apartment building, and it's really kind of about the story of that. I don't want to go too much into what this is like, into too more than that, because this is really short. It's only less than 230 pages. I obviously knew exactly what was going to happen in this because I have seen the movie. And I was surprised. This is probably one of the closest adaptations I've ever seen. Like, this is almost like scene for scene. Like, this is basically the screenplay. Like, it's pretty much scene for scene, like a pretty, I haven't rewatched the movie yet, which I'm planning to do, and I haven't seen the movie in a couple of years. And I am planning to rewatch it, but like from my memory, it seems a pretty spot on adaptation. I really, like, it does have a good like creepy vibe to it. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it worked quite as well in this written format as opposed to like a visual format. Like I think the movie was able to create a more I don't know, it just worked visually to like create a bit more suspense. I will say trigger warnings for rape in this, but I did enjoy this. I think I enjoyed the movie more. In the end, I didn't know I enjoyed the movie more because the movie's a 5-star movie for me, where it was a 4-star book. Like, I did really enjoy it. And I had no idea until after I finished this and I was looking on Goodreads that there's a sequel to the book and to this, and so this has an average rating, I think, of like above a 4. Like, this is a pretty well-loved, well-received, like classic kind of horror. The sequel has an average star rating of like a 2.51. It's like one of the lowest average star ratings I've ever seen. So I immediately looked into that, and my library has a copy, and so I've put that on hold because I need to read to see how terrible the sequel is. So I'm very excited, and it was only published like a year later. It wasn't like one of these sequels where the author kind of tried to tap into the fame of it after. It was very like immediately. I think it was like the year after this the sequel was published, so I'm very interested to see why that was so widely not well received compared to this book. I also said this has an introduction by Chuck Palahniuk. I've never read anything by Chuck Palahniuk. I've seen the movie of Fight Club, but I've never read anything by him, but I really liked this introduction. I typically, when there's an introduction, quite often end up skimming it, because sometimes, I don't know if you guys find this, the introductions to books often spoil the book. This one doesn't really, at least not that I recall, but I wasn't worried because, like I said, I've seen the movie. But it spoke about a lot of really interesting things, that like this was one of the first like horror books that was set in a place where people like live, as opposed to, like you were saying, like a lot of the like horror before this was always, or like suspense was always set like away, or like somewhere where you would go on holidays, or like a house in the middle of nowhere. You know, seemingly Transylvania, the House of Usher, or Hill House, or Bates Motel. All of these places were like places like, you know, fictional places like away, whereas this is set in New York City. Like, you know, it was one of the things that really brought horror to people's doorsteps type of thing. So it was a very interesting introduction. Anyway, I feel like I'm ranting about this now. Like I said, I did quite enjoy it, and in the end I gave it 4 stars. I then read Top Secret 21 by Janet Evanovich. This is book 21 in the Stephanie Plum series. Just in case you're new here, this is a chick lit series that follows a woman named Stephanie Plum, who in the very first book becomes a bounty hunter, but she's very like an inept bounty hunter. She's not really that great at her job, and she just gets into like a lot of shenanigans. Like, these books are very like light, comical type of thing. This one I really didn't love that much. It's the main like conflict or whatever that's happening in this, there's always like, the structure of these is usually that there's one main, there's a word for it. Target? It's not target. There's one main person, I can't think what the word is, that she is trying to track down, like that she's trying to return to get their bond back. There's always like one big criminal that she's trying to track down, and there's like lots of other little side things going on. But the main like conflict in this one, I did not care about at all. We get no further resolution on the love triangle, because if you've been watching my channel, you know that the main reason I really have stuck with this series into book 21 is that there's a love triangle that's been going on since almost the very beginning, and we still don't have any resolution. And it's so frustrating, because I was thinking to myself, like, it seems to me like such a money grab to like just keep drawing it out so that people keep reading to find out what's going to happen, because I think that it would add a lot to the series if she made the character make a decision that then we could move into like a different area of her life and like show something different. Because to be honest with you, these books are all very samey. They all follow the same type of format, the same characters just getting into new shenanigans, although the shenanigans are all very similar. I will say that and they have a lot of like problematic content, like really not politically correct content. This one has a lot to do with a little person. And there's a lot of like really like not very politically correct jokes and all of that in here, so they really don't do well on that front either. Like I said, I didn't love this one. I gave this just 3 stars. I keep forgetting to turn the page of my notebook. The next book that I read was Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. This is YA fantasy. Well, like, I would say fantasy, but it's like kind of urban fantasy. But I don't know if the actual world that's like the human world is our world. Anyway, it's about a girl named Cecile who is, at the very beginning, she is kidnapped by someone and sold to trolls. And then she is married off to a troll, to like a troll prince, right? This is all right near the beginning, this isn't spoilers. She's married off to this troll prince because there is a curse on the trolls. So then people don't really know that these trolls exist. Like, it's a very well kept secret that the trolls even exist, because the trolls have been cursed for like hundreds of years, that they're trapped in kind of like the mountain where the trolls live, that they were cursed by a witch, and that they're stuck there. But there's this like prophecy about the way to break the curse, that the trolls can finally be free. And they believe that marrying her to this troll prince is going to like help break the curse. So this I really enjoyed. This is kind of what I wanted an Enchantment of Ravens to be. There is a love story to it, and it's very like hate to love. If you're worried about this being kind of like a slave element, because she's like stolen and then like sold to this like family, and like, but it's not the person that she's married off to, it's not at their desire. They don't want to marry her. They like, they're equally as against it as she is. It's not like they've bought her. He is the son of the person who's bought her, and then is forced into marriage with her as well. So they're kind of on like equal footing in that way. He's not like her captor. So there's nothing to worry about really on that front. I was very interested in the whole world of the trolls and the curse and all of that. I will say this is like fairly long. Like, it's just over, I think it's almost 470 pages. I do think that the middle part was a little bit slow. But I did, like I said, I enjoyed the romance, enjoyed the characters. I thought this was going to have a lot more to do with, so one of the things about the main character is that she's like this great, beautiful singer. Like, you know, it's a songbird, and they made this big deal about like, is she the one, like the singing one? And then like just so you know, singing has very little to do with it. I wasn't sure why that was made to be like such a big deal in this book. Oh, I should say too that this series has quite a lot of like really interesting like political stuff going on. There's a lot of like political machinations and all of that happening, because there's a lot of, you know, the world of the trolls has a lot of, like, you know, like there's a lot of half-bloods within the trolls, which are like trolls that have part human blood, and they're considered to be like way lesser than pure blood trolls. And there's a lot of like political stuff around that, and the half-blood trolls wanting more rights and all of that. And, you know, so there's a lot of political stuff to do with that, that I really quite enjoyed as well. Like I said, I did quite enjoy this. I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. I then listened on audio to Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus. This is narrated on audio by Sophie Amos and Kirby Hayborn. So this is a YA thriller. It's basically about, there's these twins, Ellery and Ezra, I think it is, who their mother has recently gone to rehab. And so they end up moving to this small town where their mother grew up, to live with their grandmother. And the town has a lot of secrets. So the mother's twin sister went missing when they were in high school and was like never seen again. And then about 5 years after that, I think, no, not 5 years after that, 5 years ago. So that happened like when the mother was a teenager. And then 5 years prior to the beginning of this novel, there was a girl who I think she was like the homecoming queen, quite a popular like girl in a small town, who was murdered. And then now it's like 5 years later, and there's a lot of stuff being brought up again. Right at the beginning of the novel, there's a hit and run, and a very popular teacher from the school is killed. And then there are a lot of like spray paints and vandalism going on in the town, making threats against the new homecoming court, like for the coming year. And we're following the female twin Ellery, basically. Oh, and so you do get dual perspectives from Malcolm, this guy named Malcolm, who he's the brother of the boyfriend of the girl who was murdered 5 years prior, and he was always like the main suspect. Like, everyone kind of thinks that he did it, but there was no evidence against him or whatever, but the town's always been suspicious of him ever since. And so we get the perspective of his younger brother as well. So this sounds like it should be right up my alley. And I have read One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus and really, really enjoyed it, and then became aware later on of a bit more of the problematic nature of that story. This one, and from most of the reviews that I've seen, agree with this. I'm not just being really ignorant this time. There's not really much problem, like not really anything problematic in this one, which is good. So you'd think that would mean I would have enjoyed it more, but I just, like, this was just okay, and I don't know what it was. I just didn't care. I don't even think that this mystery is like super predictable, because one of the things a lot with YA mystery thrillers is a lot of times the outcome of the mystery is super predictable. I didn't necessarily think that this was like overly predictable. I think there's a lot of people who would read this, and when you get to the end, would go, oh wow, like type of thing. And I still couldn't bring myself to care. I didn't care about any of the characters. There's kind of a romance going on. Didn't care about that. I didn't care about any of it. And so, like I said, but it wasn't bad. So I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was okay. Like, it was enjoyable enough, I guess. But, like, I just didn't overly care about the story. So I couldn't bring myself to give it more than a 3-star rating. I then read Who We Were by B.M. Carroll. This is another digital ARC that I received from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. And this one is kind of funny. So this is a thriller. Well, it's a thriller. It's described as being a thriller about a group of people who are getting ready for their, I think it's 20-year high school reunion, when stuff all comes up about their past, and like secrets and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of what it was described to be. And then literally right at the start, and it's so funny, in like the first chapter, I was like, wow, this feels like it's Australian. And then literally the next chapter was mentioned about that it's set in Sydney, and I was like, oh, it is Australian. So I don't know what it was that made me pick up straight away that it was Australian. I don't know if it was something about the language or what, but it felt very Australian, and it was. So this is an Australian book. It's set in Australia. This is not a thriller. It's barely even a mystery. It has kind of a mystery aspect. So the whole like kind of main thing going on is that one of the things that the person who's organizing this new, like this 20-year school reunion wants to do is put together a new high school yearbook of them each, you know, submitting a new page of what they've done kind of over the last 20 years. And someone starts sending like fake entries to like this group of the group of people from the high school, like with like secrets, you know, things that they wouldn't want revealed about their lives from over the past 20 years. And you're following like 6 or 7 different perspectives, like different people from the high school. So the kind of mystery aspect to it is like, who is doing this? But it's mainly just about these characters and their lives and all the trials and tribulations and things that are going on in their lives. And frankly, it was a bit dull. It wasn't bad. It was just not that interesting. I found the outcome of like the mystery pretty obvious. It's one of those books where you're really given very few options, really, because you get the perspective of every one of like the people from the high school. Like I said, there's like 6 or 7, and you get all of their perspectives. So anyway, I didn't find it overly engaging or thrilling. Like I said, it's not really a thriller. It's kind of more like a drama with like a kind of mystery aspect to it. Like I said, it wasn't terrible, but I didn't love it. And then I gave that 3 stars. I then had my DNF, which was The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer. So you guys will probably have heard me mention this if you've been watching my other recent reads videos over the past month or so. I have tried to read this like 2 different times, and I put it to the side. So I was listening to it on audio. So I put it to the side, and I waited, like I listened to a few other audiobooks in between, and then I decided, okay, I think I'm in a better headspace for it. I'm going to give it another go. No, I just cannot get into this book. It's a literary fiction. It's basically about this group of people who, when they're at summer camp, they're at like a summer camp for the arts, formed a friendship, like a group of friends of like 5 or 6 of them. And you're then following them like 30 or 40 years later. I think they're in their like 40s now. So I think it's like 30, however many years later. And it's all just about their lives now that they're adults. I just cannot get into this. I've listened to the first part of it like 3 different times, and I could not tell you, outside of the very first chapter when they're at camp as teenagers, and then it jumps to like when they're adults, I literally could not tell you a single thing that happens in the part when they're adults. I just cannot focus on it. I cannot get into it. This is a book that, like, if I was like out secondhand book shopping and I saw a copy of this, I may pick it up so that I could like give it a go in physical format, because I may be able to like concentrate on it better in physical format. But as on audio, I could not get into it at all, and so I just gave up. This time, I think this third try, I listened to about like 13% of it. I mean, it is a longer book too, because it's like a 15-hour audio book. Like, it's like a almost 500-page book. So yeah, I just gave up. I couldn't do it. So then the final book that I completed over this past week was Hidden Huntress by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the 2nd book in the trilogy. So it's called the Malediction Trilogy. I don't think I mentioned that. I obviously can't say too much about what this is about because it would spoil the first book. We'll say, don't know if you can see, yeah, this one is another one that's apparently being chewed by the cats at some point. Good times. So this is like I said, I can't really say what this is about. It's really hard to give thoughts on this without spoiling stuff from the first book. I will say there's something that happens at the very end of this that is supposed to be, I think, this big like twist. It was so incredibly obvious, like from like the beginning, like it was obvious to me that that's what was going to happen. So when it was then revealed as this like big like shocking like moment, I was like, really? So didn't love that. But and then there's also the main character. I will say this is dual perspective. You get both of the two leads' perspectives. The main female character makes a decision towards the end that I just really peeved me off because it just was really, really dumb. Having said that, that's like a couple of negative things. I did really enjoy this. I enjoyed this pretty much as the first one. Again, it is probably a little bit longer than it needs to be, but I do, like I said, enjoy all of the like political maneuverings, and I really like that everything in it, like in terms of that, the conflicts like politically make sense. It's not like one of those books where like there's this big political issue, but it just seems really trivial. Like you're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like you could just solve it like doing this, and it just seems really obvious. All of their like issues seem like pretty genuine. Like there's like issues on, like there's reasons why different people can't overthrow, like for different reasons, and there's reasons why the people who are in power are doing what they're doing. Like it all kind of makes sense. So overall, like I said, enjoyed this pretty much as much as the first one, and I gave this 3.75 stars. So that's it. Those are all of the books that I read. In terms of what I'm currently reading, I'm actually not currently reading anything. I just finished this late last night and I haven't picked up anything new yet today, but I will be picking up, I thought I might as well mention what my next book's going to be. I will be picking up The Small Hand by Susan Hill. This is a little short 160-page ghost story. Don't know too much about it, but I'm excited to get into this later today. So that's what I'm going to be picking up next. And those are the books that I read this week. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. If you've read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts on them, or what you guys have been reading over this past week, I would love to know. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.